Have you ever been hurt so deeply that staying good felt like the most difficult thing in the world? Have you ever sat alone with the full weight of what someone did to you, the betrayal, the cruelty, the complete disregard for your heart, and thought about how easy it would be to just stop caring, to close off, to become exactly what they made you feel like you deserve to be treated as? You had every reason to change, every reason to harden, every reason to say, if this is how people treat sincerity, then I am done being sincere. If this is what loyalty earns, then I am done being loyal. If this is where softness gets you, then I will never be soft again. But you didn't. You stayed. You held your character when your heart was breaking. You kept being the kind of person they never were to you. You kept showing up, kept praying, kept giving even when giving had cost you more than you had. You stayed good when no one was watching. You stayed kind when no one was honoring you for it. You stayed gentle when the world around you was trying everything in its power to make you hard. And no one may have seen that. No one may have said thank you for it. No one may have even noticed the battle you were fighting inside yourself every single day just to remain who you are. But Allah saw it. He saw every moment you chose dignity over destruction. He saw every time you bit your tongue when your heart wanted to scream. He saw every quiet night when you asked Him to help you forgive someone who never asked for your forgiveness. He saw you choose Him when everything in you wanted to choose revenge instead. And what He saw, He will honor in ways this world cannot match, and in ways those people will never have access to. This is not just a video. This is for the one who stayed soft in a world that tried to harden them. This is for the one whose goodness was taken for granted, whose patience was tested beyond what anyone should have to bear, and who still chose Allah. This is for you. These are 7 truths about what Allah does with a heart that refused to break. 1, you paid a price to stay good that no one knows about. Here's what people never talk about when they speak about patience and character. They make it sound easy. They make it sound like the righteous choice is obvious when you're standing in front of it. They make it sound like staying good after being hurt is simply a matter of knowing the right thing and doing it. But you know what it actually cost, and the cost was real. It cost you relationships you wanted to fight for but had to let go. It cost you conversations where you had every fact on your side but chose not to speak because you knew that speaking would lower you. It cost you nights, real, specific nights where you lay awake with the full weight of the injustice pressing on your chest, where you had the number saved in your phone, where one message could have changed everything and you chose not to send it. It cost you the specific kind of exhaustion that comes not from doing something wrong but from refusing to. From holding a dam against the flood of your own anger day after day while life kept adding to the pressure. And not one person saw the scale of what that cost. But here is what you need to understand about the spiritual accounting of what you paid. In Islam, the hardest good deeds carry the greatest weight. Not the easy ones, not the natural ones. The ones that required the most from you, the ones that went against every instinct of your ego, those are the ones that Allah values the most, precisely because they cost the most. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, the strong person is not the one who can overpower others. The strong person is the one who controls himself when he is angry. Reported in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Every moment you controlled yourself when your anger was at its loudest, you were performing one of the greatest acts of strength in Islam. Not visible strength, not the kind anyone could applaud. Interior strength, the kind Allah sees directly. And here's what makes this even more significant. Allah doesn't just count the good deed, He counts what it cost you to do it. $1 given by someone who has thousands carries less weight than the same dollar given by someone who gave their last. The patience performed by someone who barely feels provoked carries less weight than the patience performed by someone who felt the full force of the provocation and restrained themselves anyway. You felt it. You felt the full force of what they did to you, and you still chose not to become it. That is the most expensive kind of goodness. And it is recorded in full. 2, what you look like from the angle they will never see. They thought they knew what they were looking at when they looked at you. They saw someone they had hurt, someone who stayed quiet, someone who didn't fight back the way they expected. And they read that as weakness. They read your silence as inability. They read your patience as having nothing to say. They read your continued kindness even after what they did as confirmation that they had gotten away with something. They thought they were winning. But here is the truth they don't have access to. They were only seeing you from one angle. And the angle they were looking at was the smallest possible view of who you were and what you were doing. From above, from the angle that actually matters, you looked completely different. You looked like someone standing in a fire without being burned. You looked like a believer whose faith was being tested at its most fundamental level and who was passing the test with every quiet, dignified choice. You looked like someone who had every earthly justification to retaliate and who chose Allah over the justification. Allah is with those who are patient. Surah Al-Baqarah 2 to 153. Not near, not watching from a distance, with, present, accompanying. The same verse that applies to you in that moment. And here is the specific inversion that most people never fully grasp. While they thought they were watching you lose, they were actually watching themselves reveal. Everything they did to you, every act of cruelty, every manipulation, every moment of unfairness was being recorded not as evidence of your weakness, but as evidence of their character. And every response you gave, the restrained one, the dignified one, the silent one, was being recorded as evidence of yours. The comparison is not favorable for them, and they don't know it. You don't need to announce this. You don't need to tell them or post about it or find ways to make the inversion visible to the people who witnessed it. Allah is the one making the record. And the record is more accurate and more permanent than anything you could produce on your own. So the next time you wonder whether staying good was worth it, whether anyone saw it, whether the price you paid meant anything, remember that the only witness who counts saw everything. And what he saw when he looked at you was not what they thought they were showing the world. It was something far more valuable. 3. The specific moments Allah wrote gold for you. There were moments, specific moments, not general seasons, where the choice was right in front of you. The moment the message came in and you read it and every part of you wanted to respond. The moment someone spoke about you in a room you weren't in and the story reached you through someone else and you had the ability to respond publicly and chose not to. The moment they were standing right in front of you and said something that your ego needed to answer and instead you breathed and you didn't, those moments felt small. They felt like nothing happened, like you simply held yourself and life moved on. But in the sight of Allah, those were not small moments. Those were the moments where you were most tested and where you proved exactly what kind of faith lives in your chest. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, whoever controls his anger when he has the ability to act upon it, Allah will fill his heart with faith and security. Reported by Abu Dawud. Fill his heart. Not just reward him externally. Fill his heart, meaning the reward is interior, immediate and transformative. In the moment of your restraint, something was being poured into you that nothing else can produce. And here's something even more specific. Those moments of restraint are not just written as passive entries in your record, they are written as active choices. The difference matters. Because Allah does not just record what you did, He records what you had the ability to do and chose not to. Your record includes not just your actions but your refusals. And a refusal to sin when you had every reason and every opportunity to sin is one of the most powerful entries that can appear in a believer's record. Think about that for a moment. Every time you chose not to retaliate, not to expose, not to lower yourself to the level of what was being done to you, that choice was recorded as an active, deliberate act of worship, not an absence. A presence. The presence of faith, strong enough to override the ego at its loudest. You were not passive in those moments. You were performing some of the most significant acts of your entire spiritual life. You just didn't know it at the time. 4. The goodness you gave to people who didn't deserve it was never wasted. This is the one that probably still stings. Not just that they hurt you, but that you gave them so much before they did. You gave them your time, your energy, your genuine care. You prayed for them. You showed up for them. You defended them when others questioned them. You invested in a person who turned out to be exactly what your instincts had quietly been warning you about all along. And then they walked away, or they turned on you, or they took everything you gave and left you with nothing but the bill. And somewhere in the grief of that, a thought crept in. What was the point? What did any of that giving accomplish if this is how it ended? Here's the answer that Islam gives to that question. And it's more specific than your reward is with Allah. The goodness you gave to someone who didn't deserve it was not misdirected, it was redirected. In the accounting of deeds, when you give something genuine and the person on the receiving end fails to honor it, the full weight of what you gave does not disappear with them, it returns to you, and it returns with interest. The Prophet, peace be upon him, said, verily, Allah does not allow any good deed to be wasted. Reported in Sahih al-Bukhari. Not partially wasted, not mostly kept, nothing wasted. Every act of kindness you extended to someone who used it against you is still in your account. Every prayer you made for someone who later became the source of your pain is still in your account. Every time you chose to see the best in a person who had chosen to see the worst in you, still in your account. And here's the part that should genuinely bring you peace. The person who receives genuine goodness and responds to it with cruelty is not walking away from that exchange unchanged. They are walking away with a specific weight on their account that corresponds to exactly what they received and chose to disrespect. You don't have to track this. You don't have to think about it or pray for it or seek it. It is happening automatically in the divine accounting, whether or not either of you is aware of it. Your goodness was not wasted. Your goodness was preserved. And one day in this life or in the life after or in both, you will see the full return of every single thing you gave to people who didn't deserve it. None of it was for nothing. All of it was for Allah. And what is for Allah is never ever lost. 5. What you protected by not becoming them. Here's something that almost never gets said in this kind of conversation. And it might be the most important thing in this entire video. When you chose not to become bitter, when you chose not to let what they did change who you are, you were not just preserving your character. You were protecting something specific that you would have lost permanently if you had chosen differently. You were protecting your ability to feel. This is what bitterness actually costs. Not the relationships, not the reputation. Those can be rebuilt. Bitterness costs you the capacity for genuine experience. The person who closes their heart after being hurt does not become invulnerable. They become numb. And numb is not safe. Numb is a loss far greater than whatever the original hurt produced. A numb heart cannot genuinely receive love even when love is being offered. It cannot feel genuine joy even when reasons for joy are present. It cannot connect to its creator in the deep, sincere, felt way that produces the real peace the Quran describes. Because the Quran's promise, verily in the remembrance of Allah do hearts find rest, is a promise made to a heart that can still feel. A heart that has closed itself against pain has also closed itself against the rest. You chose not to close it. And that choice made quietly, at personal cost, in the middle of real pain, preserved your capacity to receive everything Allah still has for you. You kept yourself open for the mercy that is still coming. You kept yourself available for the joy that is still written. You kept yourself capable of the connection with your Creator that no amount of worldly comfort can replicate. They tried to take from you, and what they got was your forgiveness, your patience, your continued goodness in their direction. They thought they took what they wanted and left you diminished. What they actually got was their record. What you kept was your heart. And your heart is worth infinitely more than whatever they walked away with. 6. The reward Allah reserved specifically for what you endured. There's a verse in the Quran that applies directly to you. And it contains something that is different from every other reward described in the entire book. Indeed, the patient will be given their reward without account. Surah Az-Zumar 39-10. Without account. Not a large reward, not a multiplied reward. Without account. Without measure, without limit. In Islam, almost every good deed has a known return. You pray and there is reward. You give in charity and the reward is multiplied. You fast and Allah described the reward. But for patience specifically, He removed the ceiling entirely. He said, there is no upper limit on what this earns. No calculation that can capture it. No number that describes it. And here is what you need to understand about why that is. The reason patience carries unlimited reward is because patience at its deepest level is not a single act, it is a continuous one. Every second you spent in patient endurance was a separate act of faith. Every day you chose not to let the hurt change you was a new decision. Every morning you woke up, still being the person you were before they did what they did was another entry in the record. You didn't perform one act of patience. You performed thousands of individual, daily, sometimes hourly choices. And every single one of them is in the unlimited category. Add them up and the number is already beyond calculation. And you're still adding to it. Every day you continue to carry what you were given with faith and dignity rather than bitterness and resentment. The number grows. And here's what the Prophet, peace be upon him, added to this. No one is given a gift better and more comprehensive than patience. Reported in Sahih al-Bukhari and Sahih Muslim. Better than wealth, better than health, better than fame, better than every worldly gift combined. The gift of patience, the actual capacity to endure with faith intact, is the greatest gift a believer can receive. And you have it. You demonstrated it. You lived it in conditions that would have broken many people who consider themselves strong. That is not an ordinary thing. That is the specific spiritual capital that purchases what nothing else in this life can buy. So don't minimize what you endured. Don't tell yourself it wasn't a big deal, or that other people have it worse, or that you should just move on. What you went through was real. What you chose in the middle of it was significant. And what it earned you in the account that matters is something this world cannot express in any currency it has. 7. The version of you that came out is the one Allah was building. Look at yourself for a moment, not the way they looked at you, not the way the world looked at you when you were in the middle of what felt like your worst season. Look at yourself the way Allah sees you now. You are not the same person you were before all of this happened. And not in the way that should worry you, in the way that should astonish you. You are more honest about who deserves your trust. Not suspicious of everyone, more honest. You no longer perform warmth for people who have shown you who they are. You no longer explain yourself to people who have decided what they think about you. You no longer shrink yourself to make people comfortable who were never genuinely invested in your well-being. You are more real with Allah. The pain pushed you into a depth of prayer that ease never could have produced. There are things you know about your own soul now that you only know because you were in the kind of darkness that forces you to feel your way toward the only light that was left. You have a relationship with your Creator that was built in the fire, and fire-built things do not fall apart in normal conditions. You are stronger in exactly the right places. Not hard, not closed, not cynical. Stronger. The specific strength of someone who knows what they can survive. Who knows what they look like inside the worst of it and who they choose to be even there. None of this happened despite what they did to you. It happened through it. Allah used the exact circumstances they created, the betrayal, the cruelty, the injustice, the nights when you had nothing left but Him, to build in you something that cannot be produced any other way. Allah does not burden a soul beyond that which it can bear. Surah Al-Baqarah 2-286. This verse is not just comfort. It is a precise statement about the relationship between what you were given and what you are capable of. Allah knew you could carry this before you did. He knew what would come out on the other side before you had any idea. And what He knew was worth allowing the difficulty for, because what came out on the other side is the version of you He was building all along. The people who hurt you thought they were leaving destruction in their wake. They were leaving the raw material for one of the most significant transformations of your life, and they will never know that. They will never see it. They will never understand the role they played in producing something they could not have designed if they had tried. But you know it, and Allah knows it. And between those two knowings, there is a story of faith and endurance and divine wisdom that is more beautiful than anything they could have told about themselves with all the noise they made. Walk forward. What Allah honors is already yours. You didn't come through what you came through by accident. You stayed good when it was costly. You stayed kind when